Welcome back, everyone. I have the opportunity to review your submissions for the quiz. Now, I would like to ask you for the second part. Quickly, I am going to give you instructions, then I can allow you to work with your team. Hopefully, you can work with the same team that you worked before. You're going to work in a related activity, so hopefully everything is okay with your previous team and you could continue working with the same people. So previously, I asked you for this, a document with a product backlog. Some of you submit epics, you submit your stories, you add estimation and priorities. I asked you for a design I think I mentioned during the lecture, design class diagram. If I remember correctly, someone asked. In some of your submissions, some of you do not include this part, so I have some designs missing. And in other submissions, what I have is a use case diagram. Just to clarify, what we was looking for is the design of the software, right? The classes and the relationships. So, but well, most of you submit the class diagram. Thank you for that. So I have a total of 80 teams, 18 submissions, 18 documents with this content. All of them about the same project, the project that I explained to you in the previous lecture. So I want your help. I want to ask you regarding your own submission, some questions, 10 questions. If you review, if you open your submission, can you tell me, can you review your own stories and tell me if they are correct? If you put something as a story, that means that it's not an epic, it's not technical stuff, it's not a task, right? That is something that we have been working for a long time. If you read a story, you have the knowledge to know that a story, technical stuff, task, details, or epics, generalities are not the same. So can you help me to confirm that in your submission, your stories, whatever you put as a story is really a story? Moreover, if I share with you the submissions of other teams, can you take a look to the other teams and check if they understand stories in the same way that you understand stories? Can you take a look and be sure that everyone understands what is a story? With the same criteria, if I ask you about your estimation, the estimation of the stories, whatever you use, hours or story points, and considering that the estimation is a lot subjective because the experience of the people in the team, considering that, can you read your own submission and answer the question if your estimations make sense? Can you do something similar with the estimations that others, your classmates, did? And in particular, I have a question here. Given that estimations are subjective, what does it mean make sense? How do I know if I open and review this estimation of some other team that is not mine? How can I know that this makes sense or not? What parameters can I use? What does it mean makes sense? Yes, thank you. We can take 2 user stories, and there should be some kind of relative dependency between them, right? I mean, you know the system, you know what you are solving. The other team is solving exactly the same that you are solving. You can identify 2 stories. One story could ask maybe for having the icons in the left panel, put icons there. Another story could be related with the drag and drop functionality. It's a functionality, so there is going to be a story related with that somehow. The icons on the screen, the drag and drop. And hopefully we are going to agree that one is easy to accomplish than the other. Some of you even are asking for knowledge acquisition in order to learn how to do drag and drop. So it doesn't matter that the estimation is subjective. Probably your team is considering that this drag and drop is complex. It's going to require more story points or more hours, whatever unit you use, that just put something on the screen that for sure is something that you already know how to do. Even though the numbers are not going to be the same that in my team, but if I took 2 stories, like those 2, it should make sense that one is more complex than the other, and somehow the numbers, the difference between the numbers should show that, right? So high values for complex tasks, for stories that involve complex tasks, and low values for the others. Relative comparison. Good. What about the priorities? The priorities probably are a little bit more simple. Priorities are going to be more or less similar, or should be more or less similar among the different teams. 2 scenarios, everything could have the same priority. You are thinking about doing everything in one sprint. I didn't ask you to consider 1 or 2 or more. Worst case scenario, you put higher priority and those things that are the core of the system, those things that should be done first in one sprint before other things can be done. Probably having the panels is a priority versus the drag and drop. I do not know, depending on your thinking for the sprints. But again, priorities for different tasks, priorities in terms of complexity, in terms of how relevant is that part, some criteria. Moreover, what I ask you to do is a product backlog. What I ask you to do is to create a document with one version of your product backlog, probably the product backlog in the first day, the one that you move forward to the sprint, the description of the stories that you are going to use to create the product. And one of the features of any product backlog is this deep. And in particular, I am asking for the D. Can you evaluate the full product backlog, everything there, and tell me if the detail, the level of detail in the product backlog is correct or not? Obviously, this is not a yes/no question. It's more about an evaluation with numbers, 1 to 5. It is good or not, the backlog? My expectation is that you can answer these things because you did the same and you did it correctly, right? So let's see what other people did. And maybe they did something that I did not consider something better. or not. The last one, connected with requirements, is about invest. Those two things, dips and embeds, are going to be in your exam, in your quiz. I want to be sure that we understand what is the meaning of that. Invest in particular, I already asked you for correct stories. In the first line, I was thinking about correct or not, depending of whether or not they are task, epic, or technical. Assuming that they are really stories, the longest question that I have here is, can you review every single one of the invest principles and be sure that that story covers all of them? Remember, if one of the principles is not there, that thing is not really a story, even though you have the format. But can you just double check and be sure that all these stories are independent, negotiable, valuable, and so on, one by one? And again, create an average and tell me from happy face to sad face, what do you think about the stories? Next thing that I asked you was about the design. I think that the picture of the design helped you somehow to imagine the possible tasks that are going to be involved with a particular requirement. We're going to talk about this in the following week, but the thing that I want to be sure is that we understand what is a design. We can create a class diagram. We can read a class diagram. And that was the reason for asking you to do this part of the assignment. And I would like to ask for your help to review yours, but why not to take a look to the class diagram that others create for the same problem. And you can have an idea about whether or not yours is far better or the same, or maybe it's missing some elements. For the class diagram, two important questions. Do you think that the class diagram, yours and the others, have all the elements that you need to consider? And elements, I am talking about the classes. If I open the class diagram, if I read the class diagram, that are the only classes that I need? Those are all the classes that I need, or at least most of the classes that I need? I do not ask you to do programming. And we know that this is incremental. You can always improve things. So I am not giving you the total number of classes and just asking you to evaluate if the total number of classes should be 10. So if you have 9, 8, 7, you are wrong. There is a level of subjectivity here. I am just asking, do you think that these classes are complete? Do you detect that something is missing? Maybe because you have something else that this diagram do not have? Or the opposite, this diagram have elements that you do not consider, or maybe you consider those elements inside of another class, so they have two classes, but you have only one with the same elements. And maybe you can think about what is better, two classes, small, or one with both things inside. Different story that we need to talk about it. But just watch, check the diagram, yours, the others. You're going to have the opportunity to do this comparison. And are all the classes that should be there? And there are two things in a class diagram, the classes per se and the relationships. Association, composition, aggregation, inheritance. Whether or not the classes are there, all of them, or there are classes missing. My question for you is, what do you think about the relationship in your own class diagram after you read the others, or in the others? They are using inheritance and I am not. It is better that one or mine? I have composition, but they have association. Why association and composition? Which one could be better? If you can think about it as a team, if you can talk with your team about the differences, answer the question about better or worse, give a number, a grade, quotation mark. That could be my answer for my questions about the class diagram. Particularly, I am asking you this. I am sure that you noticed that the hardest part for that project, if I ask you to implement, is the drag and drop. And maybe, just maybe, you go to the internet and search for drag and drop in Java. What do we need to do drag and drop in Java? Is really easy? It's hard? What do I do? Yeah. What do I do? And well, maybe, just maybe, you detect something, some library interface that you need, and maybe you add it to your class diagram. Maybe not. Could you check if some of the themes include something related with the drag and drop? Again, use a question from the happy face to the sad face. Just for you to tell me if you notice something there that is connected with drag and drop. Question in the chat. You are already reviewing things. Yeah, do your best to read what is there. I noticed that some of the class diagrams are hard to read. In particular, I try to cover the names. So I try to make this anonymous. Hopefully I achieve that goal. And in doing so, I create a PDF, and probably your original submission is better than the one that I am sharing. So don't worry. But for you that are trying to read a diagram and that diagram have very small fonts and you cannot zoom, do your best to grade, to evaluate, and try to understand the particular diagram. I am not asking you in particular to go into the details of the methods and the variables. In some cases you need it, so do your best. But in general, the name of the class and the connections work with the things that you can get from the files. Yeah, so far in the description, question in the chat, so far in the description that I give you for the project, the only moment in which I talk about drag and drop was from the left panel to the center. Something that I do not mention was moving an element that is here to a different part in the working area. Obviously, that is going to be a future requirement, but right now it's not. It's just from the left panel to the working area. Yeah. Okay. So, and at the end, I am adding 2 more questions just to complete 10. And the last one is about task. You will notice some of you describe the task connected with the story. So some of you put the story and the task together. It's easy to follow. Some teams separate them. Some teams provide stories first and the tasks are in a different place. Some of them connected with an ID with the stories, some of them not. But there are tasks involved. And my question with the task is similar, is whatever is mentioned there as a task is really a task, yes or no? And if it's a task, I am thinking about, do you think that those tasks are complete? Do you think that you can be the employee that giving you that set of tasks, that story, you know exactly what to do and you can complete that functionality in the software? Is that information, that document enough for you to start working? Because that is the goal of this, right? If something is missing, again, I am asking you for an evaluation between happy and sad face. How confident are you that those tasks are complete? First, that they are really tasks, and second, that they are complete. The last one, I didn't put everything because the space in the slide, But question number 10 is basically like your global evaluation. Global. From sad face to happy face, what do you think about this submission? Period. And in your thinking is the team that submit this understand tasks, stories, epics, understand deep, understand invest, and so on. So a total, a global, I didn't put here the class diagrams, is in the next line, but the total, your thinking, your global evaluation about the project, the submission for someone. You can have epics in the product backlog. Remember, your product backlog is going to have stories and epics. Your epics are going to be low priority in the bottom part of the product backlog. They can be there. It is fine. The priority is very generic, XL, LM, or something like that. You can have epics there. But most of my question here, at least the one, is review the stories. The epics obviously do not have tasks, right? You need to move first the epic to stories, and then the stories are the ones that you move to the sprint backlog, and you create your task. But there could be something. The evaluation, okay, these are my questions. For the evaluations, 1 to 5. I am asking you to give a 1, and that corresponds to my sad face, or I don't like it, or whatever you want. In like a 20%. To the 5, the happy face is like 100, right? Full points. If something is missing, if someone do not submit something, like if someone do not submit a class diagram, well, that is the only case in which I could ask you to give a 0. I mean, 1 is like, but at least there is something here to evaluate. If you need to evaluate a class diagram and there is no class diagrams, well, 0. If you're going to evaluate the stories, but there are no stories, that is not the case. Also could be 0 for the particular question. So 1 to 5, and the 0 if the element is missing. I am sharing with you an Excel file, something like this. So I give you the 10 questions, and what I am asking you to do is for each of the teams to tell me, what do you think? 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3. I don't know, just fill the numbers with your team. One extra requirement that I am asking you to do, if you can highlight the column that is you, like if I work with the team 5, if I am part of the team 5, probably the file that I submit will be something like this. The column 5 is the evaluation of my team to the work that we submit. Guys, probably when you submit something that you was considering is perfect, is a 100 over 100. What I am asking here, and the reason because I am asking you to also submit your grades to your own work, is maybe, just maybe, after viewing the submission of others, you will detect that maybe your submission has something missing. So if you detect that, please, obviously, it's like, well, my work is almost perfect, but we detect that we have some things missing, so our grades are not going to be everything in 5. I do not know. Is again your opportunity to do a self-evaluation after you check what others did for the same problem. If the class diagram is not there, that one is the 0. Exactly. Is 0. Good. So the 0 is basically is not there. Well, guys, let me be clear. I am not asking you to help me to grade the submissions. The grading of your quiz is something that the TAs and myself are going to do. The numbers that you put here for your work and for the work of others, You are not grading that people. I am going to grade your grades. I want to know if, number one, I ask you to submit stories. You submit your stories, we are going to grade your stories. Now, you know what? I am giving you stories, a bunch of stories from several different people. And I want to know if you can detect in those stories or in those diagrams the errors. Because believe me, there are several of them that are correct, but also there are some errors. Your work is to tell me that you can detect those errors. I already know that, for instance, here, the number should be 3 or 2 or 1. This is wrong, randomly. So if you told me that this is a 5, the 5 that you put there is not the grade that you are giving to this team. Is okay. You do not identify that there is an error there. So don't worry about the zeros in the class diagram. Do not worry about whether or not class diagrams are needed, and so on. This is not you evaluating your peers. This is me evaluating that you can catch problems in product backlog items and class diagrams. Yep, don't worry. You can give 5s to everyone, and the only grade that is going to be affected is your own grade, because if you put 5s to everyone in everything, I will note that you do not know the difference between stories and epic. Your team. That 5 is not going to help in any way to your classmates. So again, I am not asking you to help me with the grading. I have graders. I am asking you to show me that you submit your stories, maybe you make mistakes. Can you catch your mistakes after reading what others did? Or you submit your stories, can you notice the similarities between your stories and others? And maybe identify areas of opportunity here or in yours, whatever. It's just the same project, the people doing the same that you did. There is always something to learn or something to teach. Can you learn from your mistakes? Can you, after doing this, improve your own product backlog? Or maybe you are just going to help others to improve theirs. Probably I am going to share with you as a feedback your numbers. I am going to remove any reference to any people, so use anonymous numbers. And that is something that I could do. But again, they do not affect the grade of your peers. They are your grade. Well, two different things, and very good question in the chat. One thing is the verification criteria, and another thing, the task. And remember, when we're asking for the invest principle, one thing is the testing, that the story have some way to be tested and that you define that way. And a different thing is from that story, split the story in the different things that you need to do, right? Yes, as I mentioned before, rate your submission, and in particular in the Excel, put some special color or different color to the column that correspond to your own submission. Option number 1, you are going to give you 5s to everything. Option number 2, and again, is not going to affect your grade if you recognize, okay, we do not have 5 everything. We just learn, or we just notice that we have errors, and therefore we have errors with the stories or with the class diagram or whatever, and our own grade is not 5, but maybe a 4 or 3. I do not know. Is again your opportunity to show that you get the idea. Well, to be moved to a sprint, the PBI, it should be a story. It should have a verification criteria. So remember, the only thing that you move to the sprint backlog are the stories that have a high priority. But in order to be a story, you have all of this, including the testing criteria defined. And after you move that story to the sprint backlog, now I am going to start working on this, and now I create a task, right? So it's moving that way. There could be similarities between the testing criteria and the task. Yeah, it could be, but just remember that there are different moments. The invest is first, pass to the sprint backlog, is ready to work on, then you define your tasks. Right now you have everything together, so maybe, answering the question, maybe right now could be hard to identify what happened first, just because I asked for a flat document. So with the testing, probably there are hints about how to identify that something is complete and that something could be related with some task there. I am going to review this with you, don't worry. I am going to give you my own point of view, but first you work alone. Now I am asking you to review your classmates. Next, I want to review with you details, my own point of view. Probably not all of them. 18 is a lot, but I am going to select hopefully a couple of good ones and some errors and talk about that with you next week. Good. So I add the Excel and I add the 18 submissions. They are there for you, these files. Basically, I change the names, and also I try to cover the names of the people working in the team. Hopefully I was able to anonymize things. Anyway, they are yours and your classmates, so hopefully nothing happened there. It's just your work and the work of your teammates and your classmates. So you have these files and you have this Excel. And my work for you, working with your team, is used to complete the Excel and submit the Excel. I am giving you, as the previous case, all day today and all day tomorrow. So the due date is Friday, midnight. Quickly use hints to be sure that you can identify this. If you read this in a document, what do you think about the first question? Is a story according with this? Or is an epic, or is a task? This could be a 5, a 4, a 3, 2, 1. What do you think about this one? Question in the chat, if you can have until Saturday midnight. Yeah, okay. Right now, the due date is Friday midnight. I am going to give you one more day. So yeah, Saturday is fine. I do not want to have you working on Saturday, but yeah, I am going to open the due date until Saturday. So you can work today, tomorrow, or Saturday. It's fine. More specific about the icons. Which icons? Help me. The grades? Like these icons? I am giving you the possibility to evaluate 1 to 5. 5 is perfect, good. 1 is wrong, bad, I don't like it. These have a lot of errors. And basically these 3 numbers in the middle. So kind of open to your grade. If you want to grade over 100, it's like 100, 80, 60, 40, 20. Anything receive 20 used to submit something. It's like anyone have points used for the submission. So you cannot get less than 20%. But how do you evaluate 20 to 100 is something that I am open that you organize with your team. You can play poker with the evaluations and report the average. just to avoid these big numbers and just to avoid the decimals, I am asking you to report integer values. And please, integers. There is no 2.5 or something like that. It's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, the integer number. Good. The icons here, I don't know. This one, what do you think? This one is a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or a 5? Use that one. That is what the team submit. Is one of your submissions. Is one line in one table. So what do you think? With the information that you have on the screen, obviously. I mean, you're going to have more in the document, but with the information on the screen, all of them. Question in the chat, I am asking you to evaluate all of them. I am asking you to evaluate 18 teams, in 17 and yours. So all of them. Most of the people submit 2 or 3 pages, so it's not kind of a lot of things to read. So this one, would you say that is good or not? Okay, I have fours. Okay, I think you agree with my happy face. Yeah, this looks like something that looks like a story. And the acceptance criteria, I am sure that your 4 is connected with the idea that I only share this one row. So there are several things that I didn't put here. I didn't want to evaluate this like for grading. I just want to give you an idea of a good story or something that is going to be a happy face looks like. It's like, I have a story, it's not a task, it's not an epic, I have an acceptance criteria. Moreover, I am not giving you the full numbers, but there are numbers below, and 5 points here. The other stories have others with 5, more or less, and high priority, this one, which makes sense, is put the icons on the screen. Looks good. 5, 4, something like that is going to be above 3. Looks acceptable. Okay, what do you think about this? And again, I just copy one part of the document, it's not complete, but if you read this part, what do you think? I have a 5. I'm not sure if it's a 5 for this one, the previous one. Okay, it's close. Okay, so we are going to agree. Number 1, I have this title here, epic, and I copied this there. And then I have this line here. So if I am understanding correctly, that is an epic. I am going to agree with the chat. Moreover, I have a title here, stories. I will assume that this one is a story, this one is a story, this one is a story. What do you think about the stories? if you're reading the chat, guys, I fully agree with you. Looks like this epic in particular is already a story. You are mentioning that, and I kind of agree with that. Looks like some of the things that are mentioning as stories could be either or too technical or tasks. That is the reason because I am asking you to read others. I want you to take a look of examples and compare what you did. This is an example of something that I want you to check careful. And again, it's all about what is an epic, what is a story, what is a task, and what is technical. Check that. But I could agree, like a happy face and a not exactly happy face, but up to you. I do not want to move your grade in a particular direction. Class diagrams, similar scenarios. What do you think about this picture as a class diagram? Good. Again, hopefully the answers in the chat, even though it's a small number of people, they represent what you, all of you think. I mean, I have 80 people here, but 5, 10 in the chat. Step number one, a lot of elements. And when we saw a lot of elements, it's like there are a lot of things there. Maybe it's correct. We need to review that part. Yeah, there are a lot of elements, but are all those elements needed? Is really a solution, or is just something that is complex, but maybe not correct? I do not know. I am not telling you that is wrong or correct or not. I am just telling you we need to review. However, something that is immediately an issue, and you mentioned in the chat, the relationships. I do not know if all these classes are needed. Some of them are empty or some of them are hard to read. The number of classes is suspicious. However, the relationships are a concern. Because when I read the relationships, basically all of them are association and they are bidirectional association. I mean, use one line. And that is, I mean, the only one that looks different is this one. And it's an inheritance, but then this thing here is kind of special. I don't know. It's the only opportunity for a relationship that is different from association. And that is another suspicious thing. I like the distribution, the model, the controllers, the views. That is great. This looks more a component diagram than a class diagram. I am evaluating this as a class diagram, and therefore my concerns of looking at this like a class diagram is probably a lot of elements, probably, but for sure the relationships are not exactly correct. Why? Because according with the program that you need to do, I am pretty sure that there are going to exist some relationships that include or aggregation or composition. So probably I am missing some diamonds here. Yes, there are associations, but not all of them are bidirectional. There are several associations, particular the graphical user interface with the panels, that the direction is unidirectional from the window to the panel, for instance. So the fact that this big do not exactly imply that is correct. But again, my invitation, take a look to the class diagram. What I want to know is your knowledge, the knowledge of your team regarding software design class diagrams. So again, it's an evaluation about you. And I show you this, do not assume that just because something is small, is wrong, or just because something is big, is correct. Just review the details, the classes and the connections. And the last one, what do you think about this? It's smaller than the previous one, but do we understand the relationships here? Can we identify which classes are going to be where in the system? Like the elements that are going to participate in the model or in the view. It's easy to read. Could you agree with the relationships? Yeah. My comments for you. There is always possible to assume that. I mean, answering the question in the chat, yeah, this is incremental. You always can change things, but there are things that are errors, not only because the evolution of the project, but because something is not exactly good. For instance, if I review this one, things that are missing. This guy here, the frame, I am sure that you can show that this one is going to be inheriting from JFrame. Number one. Number two, all these panels, I am pretty sure that they are directional relationships because the window is going to call them, but not in the opposite direction for sure. Obviously, there are inheritance missing from all of them from JPanel. Operations, this is very good. The first time that I looked to the diamond, and yeah, they are going to belong to some place. However, I do not think that this diamond is in the panel. This is a mixture of the model, the data, and the graphical user interface. This one, for instance, something is missing here. Another class probably, that is the collection of icons, the working space, that is the one that should be connected with the graphical user interface. But those are details that I want to review with you in the following lecture. So don't worry with the classes. What I want to know is your current level of knowledge. And from that, I could move to review things to know which level of details I need to review. But for instance, this one looks better than the previous one. Still several things that we can fix and improve. But I want to know your opinion regarding this one, regarding this one. I do not put any face there. I want to be open to your comments. So that's it. Complete the Excel, evaluate all the teams. I am going to move the due date Saturday. And it's a team assignment. So work with your team, hopefully with the same team that you work in the previous one. Good? Any question? Perfect, guys. I am going to stop here so you still have time, 20 minutes, maybe to organize with your team. Question?
Yeah. Last class, I remember you saying that maybe if we get a time, then we can design a class diagram and it could be a rough draft. Hence, we didn't, like, we did a very rough draft of the class diagram. So during the assignment, will this be evaluated in terms of relationships and in depth?
Yeah, with the class diagram. Basically, what I want to know is your experience with the class diagrams. I want to know if you're familiar with the class diagrams and the relationships. And what I am going to get is that idea. Not only reviewing what you submit, but I want to know what do you think about other class diagrams. I am aware that probably what I am going to discover is that you are not familiar with class diagrams, because maybe you are not going to detect a particular error, because maybe you are going to put 5 points here, because as someone mentioned in the chat, it could be correct just because there are a lot of elements. That is fine. Regarding the class diagram, I am not evaluating you. It's not going to impact your grade because it's kind of a survey, the class diagram part. What I am evaluating, what I can put a grade is you should know invest, deep, task, stories, epics. That first questions, if I go back here, all these questions are things that you should know and things that I am evaluating. These things here, the class diagrams, is more like a survey. I need to know your knowledge in that topic because are things that we're going to review in the following weeks. So do not worry. Again, with the best of your knowledge, evaluate the class diagrams, but do not worry about that impacting your grade in this activity. Make sense?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question, guys?
Professor, is like everyone is supposed to just submit one Excel file per team, or?
Yes. Just like before, one person in your team submit the Excel, and the Excel should have the evaluation of all the teams, right? And please put in the Excel your names. Be sure that the Excel that you submit in some place have the names of every people in that team. Just because I am asking you to work in the same team that you worked before, but if for any reason you make changes in the members of your team, just put the names of the people that work in the Excel. Good?
Professor, one question,
Yeah.
not regarding this, but regarding the previous quiz, when can we expect the grades for quiz 3? I believe, so we don't repeat the same mistakes in the subsequent quizzes. Just wanted to know that.
Probably next week. So the grades are not going to be available before the due date of this.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Thank you.
If you have a particular question, a very specific question about something that you submit, but you have kind of unsure if they work or not, you can send me an email. I could try to answer the email, but the grades, they are going to wait until next week.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, guys, so 20 minutes, try to work with your team, organize things. Some of you already download the files. See you next week.